Board Game Buddy.
The 2010s were an incredible time period for board games. The number of games being published reached record levels, with Kickstarter beginning in 2009 being a huge part of that landmark change. However, it wasn't just about quantity, with many of my favourite games of all time being released in this decade. And it's not just me who thinks that this decade was special. If we look at the Board Game Geek rankings, we see that 2/3 of the top 1,000 games come from the 2010s, and 3/4 of the top 100 are from this decade too. So, grab a cup of tea and a biscuit. Sit back and relax as I talk you through this decade, 1 year at a time. I'll give you one game in each year, which will add up to an amazing set of 10 games, showcasing the epic diversity of board games at their best. Note that I've not always picked the quote-unquote best game in each year, as I've tried to curate a shelf of 10 games that highlight different genres, play with different player counts, and give you a rounded collection that will pass the test of time. Yep, just these 10 games will save you needing to buy another game again. Well, until that cool new game appears on Kickstarter. Let's start with 2010. This was an epic year for board game releases, and I had to think really hard to decide between Seven Wonders, Dominant Species, Navigador, Innovation, and Forbidden Island, which were all released in 2010. Ultimately though, I have to pick Seven Wonders, with its wonderful theme, fast-paced gameplay, surprising strategic depth, and excellent card drafting mechanism. This really is a game for everyone. In theory it plays 2 to 7, but it really shines at 3 or 4, as then everyone is squarely competing with everyone else, and you can plausibly consider all players in your card choices. Games are quick running at around 30 minutes. If you do have 7 people who want to play this, then just split into a table of 3 and 4 to have much more fun. And if you want 2-player Seven Wonders, then Seven Wonders Duel does this far better than the awkward 2-player variant of Seven Wonders. 2011 was less vintage for me, although I would note that I've not played War of the Ring or Mage Knight, which are highly respected games from this year. So for me, my choice was between Eclipse and Flashpoint Fire Rescue. There are better cooperative games coming up in later years, so I pick Eclipse as the game of 2011 for my list. Eclipse is an epic space adventure and ticks the essential 4X box in my list too. 4X games where we're seeking to explore, expand and exploit the map to extinguish our rivals. You want a lot of free time, 2 to 3 hours, and ideally 4 to 6 people around the table, so it's not going to be something you play every week, but when you do it'll be a blast. As with all such games with many competing factions, there is plenty of room for alliances and backstabbing, pleading and shouting, fun and laughter. Step forward to 2012 and it's another bumper crop of excellent games. My personal favourites to choose from being Terra Mystica, Robinson Crusoe, The Resistance Avalon, Love Letter and Makikoru. All of these games are amazing and well worth seeking out and playing. However, only one of them isn't bettered by another similar game in my 2010s list, and so take a bow, The Resistance Avalon, you're my choice for 2012. Everyone needs a great game that can handle a crowd in their collection, and Avalon ably fills this gap. It will happily keep 6 to 10 people enthralled in short, sharp games for about half an hour. Essentially, it's a hidden role team game where asymmetries of information lead to an epic battle of good against evil. Can you use social deduction to identify your teammates and win the game? I must have played this game 100 times, and it really taught me how to lie to someone's face, as well as how to throw a friend under the bus to save my skin. You might be slightly confused in the first game or two, as everyone seems to be a bit dodgy, but you'll soon be able to work out, or so you think, who's playing a role and who's the real deal. '13 is unlucky for Starman. I really struggled to find any games in 2013 that really excelled and fitted my list. Concordia, Caverna, Russian Railroads and Viticulture have all shared my gaming table but not left a lasting impression. It's almost by default I'm picking Nations as my game of 2013. This civilization building game has an excellent theme and created a lot of excitement at board game clubs upon its release. I don't hear so much about it these days, which might be because Through the Ages is a better civilization game, but that was released in the previous decade. Note that I'm not counting the new version of TTA as a newly released game and so isn't eligible for this list. But seriously, Nations is a great game in its own right and gives you that satisfying feeling of creating your own civilization and developing it through the centuries whilst fighting your rival civs all the way. It plays well with 2 to 4 players, the game's taking about 40 minutes per player. Moving on, 2014 was an incredible year for lighter games. I struggled to pick between Patchwork, Star Realms and Splendor, and I haven't even played Roll for the Galaxy, Dead of Winter or Deception, Murder in Hong Kong, which are other excellent games releasing this year. I've gone for Patchwork, as I want a rock solid 2-player only game in my list. This one is simple to teach, nice to look at, and with surprising strategic depth that opens up the more you play it. Game time is under half an hour, so there's plenty of time to get a second and a third game in a row in to hone your strategy. Pick pieces of fabric to make up your patchwork quilt, which you tessellate Tetris style into a grid. Some pieces of fabric have helpful shapes, others increase your buttons income, which are the currency used for buying new pieces of fabric, and all the pieces have a time cost to sew, with time being a limited commodity and also deciding whose turn it is. So it's always a challenge deciding which piece of fabric to buy, and that's before you consider what your opponent wants, so you can see that this little box of fun has huge potential for strategy. Next we head to 2015, and what was for me a landmark year with 3 amazing games being released. Codenames showed how much fun word games could be with a strategic twist, and it sold squillions of copies worldwide. Seven Wonders Duel showed how a designer could take a much loved multiplayer game and give it a rehaul to provide the same experience in a 2-player only package. And lastly, but most importantly, Pandemic Legacy Season 1 showed what an amazing thing a Legacy game could be. Now I know Risk Legacy came first, but Pandemic Legacy shook the board gaming world with how brilliant a game could be, and so this is my choice for 2015. This game has the players working as a team to fight a global pandemic, with the results of each game having a legacy impact on the next game and so on. The storyline arcs across each of the 12 months of a calendar year, although it's so much fun you'll be doing well to not play the whole 12 months in 12 weeks or less. It does take some courage from me to willingly destroy board game components and to accept that my new game can only be played through once, but the thematic experience is unrivaled, and the cost when compared to a meal out is really not so bad. This game plays well with 2 to 4 players and takes about an hour to play, although debates about the legacy decisions post-game can sometimes double this time. My wife and I have actually played Season 1 twice now, and my wife is keen for a third run through, so although some of the element of surprise and mystery is gone, this is still a rock solid game in its own right. 2016 is, for me, a bit of a pause between the big hitters of 2015 and those to come from 2017. Don't get me wrong, I still have an incredible choice for you, but it just wasn't a year of great depth. Now I haven't played Scythe or Aeon's End or Innis though, which might be your choice for this year. For me, it came down to a straight choice between Great Western Trail and the Harry Potter Hogwarts battle. I love Harry Potter and think it's everything a great movie tie-in should be, but there are better co-ops on my list and I want a Rondel game, so GWT gets the pick. Great Western Trail is a little weak on theme, and that theme is rather dry, but the mechanics are excellent. Choose one of 3 key routes to victory, then buy cows, recruit workers, build buildings and deliver cows to achieve it. Once you realise it's a Rondel game, where which actions are available opens and closes depending on your previous action, the game's majesty reveals itself to you. Now you have to optimise your moves to just one strategic aim rather than doing a bit of everything, and the game becomes a breathless race to the finish line. This game is excellent at 2-player, taking about 75 minutes, but be careful with higher player counts as the time to play really increases. Overall it's an excellent game, although I'm yet to be convinced that the recent rebranding was necessary. Now to 2017, and what might well be the greatest year for board games. Seriously, I have to choose between Gloomhaven, Spirit Island, Azul, Pandemic Legacy Season 2, Sagrada and Codenames Duet. All of them are modern classics in their own right. Gloomhaven's enormous box, so beloved of Instagrammers, frightened the life out of me for months before I dared try to get my head around how to play. But once I had, it stayed firmly on the table for weeks with nothing else coming close. It takes all the great things about RPGs and crashes it into a board game format, with fun storyline and no need for a games master. However, it's essentially a legacy game, and I already have the greatest legacy game, Pandemic Legacy Season 1, on my list, so rather controversially, the #1 game on BGG doesn't make my list. Instead, I'm taking Spirit Island, a game that's hit my table regularly since I bought it back in 2017. We've even got both the expansions, which just make the game even better. In essence, players are spirits seeking to protect the indigenous Dahan from the evil imperialists. Players do this by building a deck of cards to attack the invaders, defend the Dahan, and strike fear into the invaders. Games require careful planning and cooperation between the players to fight off the constantly evolving threat of the invaders. With 2 players, this is close to the pinnacle of gaming, taking about 90 minutes to play, but be careful of increasing player count further, as the puzzle complexity and time to play will go up rapidly. The game comes with 3 invaders, 8 spirits, and 4 scenarios, so the possible combinations are enormous, ensuring a new gaming experience each time out. This is not a game you'll tire of soon, so it makes a great addition to my list. Stepping forward to 2018, we find even more great games being released, with my favourites being Brute, Quedlinburg, Decrypto, Just One, The Mind, and Space Base. I suspect I'd like Everdell, Underwater Cities, Obsession, Welcome to, and Villainous too, but I've not yet played them. So a great haul to choose from, and all would be good choices, but I want a dice game in my top 10, so Space Base is my choice. I know many people are addicted to Space Base on BGA, so it will be a popular choice as well, as a genre-filling one. In this game, players build a space base which gives them varying credits, income and victory points, depending on the dice rolled on their turn, and crucially, on their opponent's turn too. It's a battle to buy the best base upgrades, as well as balancing the probabilities of those fickle dice rolls. It's also a race, so players need to make the right call as to when to stop improving income to buy new upgrades, and instead switch to victory point generation. It's quick to learn, competitive and challenging, and from my experience scales really well from 2 to 4 players, with playing time running at a flat hour, so a rematch almost always happens. Closing the 2010s, we have 2019, which has less classics so far for me than most years in this amazing decade. I'm picking between The Crew and Horrified, having not yet played some potentially great games, such as Clank Legacy, Maracaibo and Aeon's End. Horrified is an excellent game, with the feel of Pandemic, but with great new theme and gameplay twists. However, I'd like a pure card game to add to my list, so The Crew gets my vote. The Crew is the gamification of the classic card game Whist, or maybe you call it Trumps. The lead player plays a card and the others have to follow suit if they can. Highest card wins unless someone plays a trump. What makes it great is that the game sets the team challenges of ever-increasing difficulty, which have to be achieved to move on to the next level. There is some kind of space theme tagged on fairly irrelevantly. As for me, it's just a great mental challenge to plan out and play my cards to help the team win. Communication is strictly limited, and this only adds to the tension. As soon as a round is over, the talking starts as the players reflect on what went well and what didn't, and how to improve next time. Such a simple concept, and so nicely implemented. The game plays well with 3 or 4, and there's a wonderful but unofficial 2-player variant that I actually find more strategic than 3 or 4 player, as there's more information available. So, this is my top 10 from the 2010s. Got a legacy game, Pandemic Legacy from 2015, playing 2 to 4. A card drafting game, 7 Wonders from 2010, playing 3 or 4. Trick-taking game, The Crew from 2019, playing 3 or 4. A dice game, Space Base from 2018, playing 2 to 4. A rondel game, Great Western Trail from 2016, really playing best with 2. A deck builder, Spirit Island from 2017, playing well with 1 or 2. A 4X game, Eclipse from 2011, playing 4 or 6. A 2-player game, Patchwork from 2014, playing well with 2. A civilization game, Nations from 2013, playing with 3 to 4. And lastly, a social deduction game, the Resistance Avalon from 2012, playing 6 to 10. Let me know what you think of my decisions and what you would swap in or out to make the list perfect for you. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.
Board Game Buddy.